Hi everyone, welcome back to my booktube channel. My name is Sukhaja, and in this video I'm going to be recommending 12 books that you can read in a very quick short time. These books are generally between 1 and 200 pages long, so if you're looking for a short and quick read and one that isn't too thick, then I recommend that you try reading these books. The reason for this video is because I felt that now it's already the third month of the year and many of us have set up unrealistic expectations of our yearly reading goal, and it's likely that we haven't made too much progress yet. We would like to suddenly get a heads up, and so for that I recommend reading these short books that you can easily take off the list and add to your TBR. Let's get started without further ado. The first book I want to talk about is The Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata. This is by a Japanese writer who recently got published, and she's written her new novel Earthlings, which is on my TBR and I'm planning to read. This is about a story of a woman who is 36 years old and has worked at a convenience store for all her life, and it's really hard for her to shift jobs, but everyone in society, including her parents and her friends, are coaxing her constantly to change jobs and to take a career forward. And this basically questions the way we live, the way society perceives people who choose to do the same thing over and over again and yet find some kind of appeal in it. There are people who find appeal in doing monotonous, similar kind of work, and they are happy and content with their lives, but yet society has this pressure that it likes to apply on people like that. This is a very unconventional story and one that brings an unconventional character into the spotlight. Her name is Keiko and she does not fit in. So if you guys loved Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine, then I recommend that you try reading The Convenience Store Woman. Let me know what you thought. Kachar Gochar by Vivek Shanbhag. Vivek Shanbhag is a Kannada writer and he is somebody who frequents the cafes in Bangalore, especially the ones in Brigade Road. Vivek has recently written this book called Kachar Gochar a few years back. It is translated by Srinath Perur. This book is very readable and easy to read. I read this probably in a day and it's a very relatable story. It's about this family that suddenly gains success and wealth overnight. They live in a joint family, so all of them, the aunts and uncles and the children, they all live together. This is just a very interesting insider look at the complications that might arise when overnight a family becomes rich. It's set during the, I think, 70s, if I'm not wrong. It's basically a story about the consequences of success. I read this a while ago, but I really enjoyed reading it and would highly recommend this. And the next book I want to talk about is 84 Charing Cross Road by Helen Half, and this book is a very enduring story about the love for books and love for literature, and this is about a woman who is trying to get access to books during the Second World War. She is living in the United States and wants to access books from an antique bookstore in the UK. So she is writing letters to the people in the bookstore, and by writing letters every few months and every year and every other week, she builds this long-lasting connection with the people in that bookstore, and it gives rise to a friendship and a very heart-touching story indeed that makes for. I want to talk about how this book is actually based on real letters that were written, correspondences that happened between these people who ran the bookshop, as well as the woman who was very passionate about collecting antique books. So would highly recommend reading this if you want a quick read. It's less than 200 pages long. Now the fourth book I want to talk about is After the Quake by Haruki Murakami. This book is something that I really enjoyed because it was the first short story collection by Murakami that I read. This has a collection of stories that all center around the earthquake, and this is mainly the Kobe earthquake, which happened many decades ago, and there are different characters who come up in the narrative. Basically, I feel like this book tries to make sense of the earthquake and what it meant. Sometimes people don't understand nature and how it works and the disasters that happen everywhere. It sometimes catches us off guard and derails us. So in this we talk about mythology, we talk about folk tales. The Japanese people have come up with a lot of things, and it's just a very interesting, unputdownable book, and I highly recommend that you read this. My favorite story in the collection is Super Frog Saves Tokyo, and I absolutely love it. I think there was a movie that was made, an animated short documentary about Murakami and how his works were translated, where the story is kind of adapted onto the screen, and I absolutely loved it and highly recommend that you watch the documentary as well. The next book that I want to talk about is Bombay Baloch by Jane Borges. It is again less than 200 pages long. This is about the Goan Catholic community that is settled in Mumbai, and this is after India won independence. It's around that time. It's about the different experiences that occur, the kind of expectations people have of young people, and how, you know, they're expected to get married and have children and things like that. So it deals with the lives of different people in the community, and they keep recurring in all the stories. A lot of interesting characters as well, and I completely enjoyed many of the stories in this, but I'm yet to finish, I think, a few of them. and there are a lot of characters. But if you are looking for an insider look into Bombay and some nostalgia, or a book that tells you more about Anglo-Indian life and living in the community back in the day, then you should definitely read this. The next book that I recommend is My Past is a Foreign Country by Zeba Talkani. This is also a short book. This is for people who love memoirs and non-fiction. This is basically a very honest and raw account of how Zeba felt as an outsider, her experiences having lived in Saudi Arabia, India, as well as Germany and the UK, and having worked there as well. She is very open and vocal about her experiences growing up dealing with alopecia, which is hair loss, and a bunch of other things. So I've also made a video about this, a complete book review video, which I'll link there if you want to check that out. So I highly recommend reading this in one sitting as well. The next book I want to talk about is If I Had to Tell It Again by Gayatri Prabhu. Now this book is another memoir. This is for those who love non-fiction and memoirs and would like a quick read. This is a little heavy and on the heavier emotional side. I'm going to talk about how this is a very raw memoir again, and it's written very lyrically. I love the structure, and it deals with a lot of topics from mental illness and Gayatri's relationship with her father, which was very complicated, and is basically the central underlying theme in the story. She goes deep into exploring the psychological impact that that relationship had on her, and how it left her feeling very shattered in her later years, and see those experiences that come in between adulthood and childhood and how they impacted her in the long run. So I would highly recommend you read this as well. The next book that I have here is Upstream by Mary Oliver. This is fantastically gorgeous cover. This is for those who love poetry and art and literature. I would highly recommend that you read this. It is a book that you'd like to read and dwell on. It has some really lovely lines. One of them I'd like to read out loud. There is little the creatively inclined person can do but to prepare himself, body and spirit, for the labor to come, for his adventures are all unknown. The extraordinary is what art is about. So she talks about all of these things in the form of really short essays which make it very readable and easy to keep track of. So she was a huge fan of Walt Whitman growing up, and she says here, I learned from Whitman that the poem is a temple or a green field, a place to enter and in which to feel. I really enjoyed the first few essays in this. A few of them weren't really my cup of tea, but let me know what you thought of the book if you decide to read this. And it's basically about taking risks, about plunging into the unknown and attempting to unleash your creative side and not hesitating to take that first step. So that's what this book is about. The next book that I want to talk about is In Other Words by Jhumpa Lahiri, which I absolutely loved. This is one of my favorite books of non-fiction that I've read. This is about Jhumpa Lahiri's conflict with identity and how when she started studying Italian, she got really passionate and wanted to embrace the language in every possible way. She talks about how attempting to learn a language is not just a one-sided affair. You also have to learn about the culture that the language brings with it. It's not just learning words, there's so much more to it, and it impacts your day-to-day life, the way you think, all of that. And I feel like she's covered a vast range of subjects in this book, and the essays are very readable, and I absolutely love this. It's a self-reflection. When Lahiri moves to Florence with her family, she decides to embrace all of it, like the Italian language, and it becomes a very immersive experience for her learning Italian. She wants to be able to write a book in Italian one day, and that's what this book is about, and many more other things. Let me know if you decide to pick this up. The next book I want to talk about is Annie by Max Porter, which I read last year. This is about a little boy. Very interesting characters come into this book, especially Papa Toothworth. It's written in prose poetry, so it's very lyrical and the structure is unusual. This book is for those who want a quick read, but at the same time, those who love literary fiction, you will enjoy this book. This is definitely one of those books that's meant to be reread and analyzed and all of that. There's a lot of wordplay in it and a lot of interesting perspectives, because this is about a boy who lives in a small town who goes missing, and how there's this legend about this man who roams as a ghost in the town named Papa Toothworth, and how a lot of people feel that he is the one who took the child away, and there's a lot of mythologizing that happens by the stories that these people tell in the town. So it's a very interesting book, and I highly recommend that you read it. He's also come out with this new book called The Death of Francis Bacon that I'm absolutely looking forward to reading. More about the books that I'm looking forward to in another video. The next book I want to talk about is Ghost of All by Sarah Moss. I have mentioned this before in my channel. If you're not new here, you would be aware. This book is about a social experiment that happens where this group of archaeology students, they decide to undertake this experiment with their teacher, where they try to recreate like the way life was back in the Iron Age in England. It involves a lot of embracing the primitive lifestyle and being very simple, and this brings some alarming things into light. There is this girl, her dad is also sucked into this experiment, and someone who's very passionate about it and wants to get it right to the last detail. So in the process of doing that, some very dark and disturbing truths about their family come to the fore. and that is one of the underlying issues that this book is about. But it's super interesting and very, very thrilling, and I would highly recommend that you read this. The final book that I want to talk about is The Poison of Love by K.R. Meera. It's a very raw exploration of love about this one woman who falls in love with a man because he's good looking and he charmed her, and this was a mistake that she made when she was very young. So it's a book about regret, it's a book about making wrong choices and stuff like that. Later on in life, she goes to the city of Vrindavan, which is the city of widows in Varanasi, and there she thinks about her choices and the decisions. She comes to terms with the repercussions of her choices and all of that. So if you are into reading stuff like that, it is not my favorite book, but it's still a very short book. It's regional literature, and K.R. Meera is a Malayalam writer, and this is the only book of hers that I've read. Let me know if there's any others that I should read in the comments down below. This is mainly about Tulasi, who first meets Madhav and is irrevocably drawn to him. She is very dalliances, but at the same time she takes risk and she lets go of her career, she lets go of her fiance in search of this person's love, and that has consequences, and that's what this book is about. That's all I have for you today, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know if any of these books are interesting to you, and if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and also subscribe to my channel. I will be back next week with another interesting bookish video. Meantime, stay safe, stay sane, and I will see you soon. Bye.